Welcome to the Special Olympics Dry Valley Regional Spring Games. Thank you for being here today. This is a special event for me and my fellow athletes who attended school here at Kissimmee Valley High School, or who have graduated from it. 8 years ago, I stood here for the very first time as a Special Olympics athlete.
Michael was born in November 1997. His first issues were his eyes. And I'd look at him and all of a sudden one eye would just kind of be gone. So we took him to the doctor and he started wearing glasses when he was 6 months old. We bought the little ties to keep him on his head, but we finally just got rid of those. He never needed them. And then he wasn't talking very much. He walked a little bit slower than our other kids, but still within a normal range. So, you'd think, okay, we're just crazy, nothing's wrong. They recommended doing speech therapy for a little bit. He cried, he hated it. It was horrible, but we did it. And then they said put him into preschool. So we put him into a preschool, a regular preschool, so he could socialize with other kids. And it was good, but when he was in a group of other kids, you could see that there were a lot of things that were a little slower or a little different with him, and it was harder for him. But still we blamed, it's his speech, there was something else. Well then, one of the teachers that was trying to say they were gonna get us ready, tell us how he would do in kindergarten. She says, no, he's not ready, but I think there's more going on here. And it was a horrible thing
to hear that from somebody who's trained to see these signs, and having our other three kids kind of zoom through with flying colors. You get hit, like, what have you done differently as a parent? Why is this child different?
So we went to the regional center just fully expecting they would say, he's slow, but there's nothing wrong. And instead we had our evaluation and they said he had autism. And I remember driving home and just it's like a death in your family because you have all your dreams and hopes. And it's just, you don't know what the future holds. You want so much for your kids, and all of a sudden you think this might not happen. You don't know. And, we were completely blindsided. We came to church. I remember that first week, and, we were upset. And some people were trying to be very helpful, and they weren't very helpful. Oh, don't worry about it. They don't know what they're talking about. He's going to be fine. There's nothing wrong with him. And you know in your heart, because you've known in your heart there's something wrong. You just don't know what it is, but you know something is wrong. And people are trying to be helpful, telling you that when you finally got an answer, oh no, they're not right. And then you think, well, is there something wrong? If he does have autism, is that, something to be ashamed of or something bad? One of our friends, Floyd, that we had known for years, had said, you got to come to this church. You have to come to this church. And, the pastor's just like, it's your old friend talking to you, and, it's got to be great. And I'm like, I'm not going to that church. It's a Nazarene church. I'm never going to a Nazarene church. And I was not going to go. And we looked at other places, and we suffered through those places. And I finally thought, okay, I'll go. And I loved it.
The hallmarks of who we are authentic, we don't really feel like we have a lot of answers to the questions, but we feel like we can journey together very faithfully. And so that mix of real life and truth, and how does the Word of God interact with very real situations in life?
I could have Michael in church, and it wasn't a big deal. When he got a little bit bigger and needed to be in there, he needed help in Sunday school. And so they assigned a buddy for him, just to be with him. And Terry Haft was one of his teachers who just took a huge interest in him and spent that extra time making him feel special, not making him feel different, and making him be part of the rest of the group, which is a huge thing.
They weren't trained, to deal with a child with autism, but they didn't care. They knew that there was a child and just be with them. So
They say when a church has great music, then great musicians come to the church, and then you have more great musicians. I think that's especially true of families with special needs kids, where there's a place where they're loved and cared for, where someone's already really broken that ice and gotten through those difficult pieces of where do we fit and how do we fit. Then I think those next families that walk in the door, there's already kind of rails to run on, and so you have a tendency to be able to minister at a much broader scope because you already understand the process, and there is a process. Every single person with special needs, just like every single person who doesn't have special needs, has something very unique to bring, and that giftedness, whatever it looks like, is valuable and important. But if you're not willing to see it, or if you don't understand how to access it, then you miss it. You just don't get to share in it.
Thank you, Pastor Dave, and happy Easter, everyone. My name is Michael Leone. Welcome to my school. I'm a junior here at Crescenta Valley High School, and I'm a manager for Falcon basketball. I also participate in our church, youth group, and fun life. I've gone to Montrose Church since I was 2 years old. Many of you probably don't know about me, but most of my classes are in special education because I have autism and school isn't easy for me. My siblings have competed in sports all their lives, and I've always wanted to have fun, compete, and achieve my dreams too.
When he was in 5th grade, we got a little flyer in the school district mail that there was going to be a CV track meet for Special Olympics. And all it says is if you wanted to participate, sign up. So we went ahead and sent that in and got the information. And there was no training for him at that time. It was show up and participate. So it was a place where they were letting other athletes join in for that day. So we didn't know, they weren't technically a Special Olympics athlete at that point, but it didn't matter to us. They still got medals. But it ended up being, at that same time, he was diagnosed with diabetes. And so I was thinking, man, and that was one of the things I thought. I was like, he's not gonna be able to do this. Like, what are we gonna do? How do you go run a track meet right after you're diagnosed with diabetes? And it's already hard for him to do stuff.
This diagnosis would change my life forever. I was scared and afraid. I didn't want to quit, but I was afraid I wouldn't be able to play sports again. But quitting is not in my dictionary.
As I was kind of coming along in ministry and going through seminary, and I did some concentration in urban ministries, and the urban ministry model is you go to a community that needs care and you assess need, and then you build a ministry that meets the need that's already present. And so in coming to a suburban church and growing up in a suburban church, the mentality is so backwards. It is, here's what we have to offer, take us or leave us. And we're always soliciting from the community how to support us, whatever else. I mean, yes, come to our Easter service, that's something we provide for you, but that's not a need you feel. And so to stop and to say, what are the needs in this community that are already happening that we can partner with, that are already felt needs and known needs that we don't have to come up with, are prescribed to them. And so when Special Olympics came along, that's a need. It's not our need, it's the need of the community, it's the need of the Tri-Valley area. We have hundreds of athletes and families that don't get served, and the year that it didn't happen, then you say, well, wait a minute. That whole thing didn't happen. Who else is going to generate volunteers? Who else is going to take responsibility in funding? And isn't that exactly what Jesus would ask us to do? To step into that space and say, this will never fall through the cracks again.
We have been attending Montrose Church for 11 years, and when I was part of the organization that did the volunteers at Crescenta Valley High School, they had pulled in some of our members, and then 4 years ago or so, when I came on staff at Montrose Church, we decided to make it a real church commitment. And so we really reached out to the church to be the volunteer base for the event. I would guess for our regional event, which will come up in April, we'll probably have 500 or 600 volunteers, and probably 400 or 450 of them will be out of this congregation.
But we're probably the only ones that know that.
But the important thing is that the athletes feel celebrated. And I think that being celebrated by your peers is one thing, but we have a lot of athletes who live in group homes, who don't have family support, and for them to be cheered for is, you can't even put a value on that. It's really one of the most important aspects of what we do, is that we are celebrating a group of people who aren't really celebrated a lot in life.
I thought like, oh my gosh, I thought we would never make it because of like the whole opportunity. I was in a nervous wreck, but when I screamed, go, go, go to Anthony, he, oh my God, booked like there was no tomorrow. So I want to thank my team, Kevin, Han, Anthony, Kevin, Anthony, and Michael, to be in the greatest team ever. I love this team. Thank you for this, and I'm really thankful. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
I was thinking the other day, it was soon after Michael was diagnosed, our church had a prayer service and a healing service, and they were anointing people with oil that wanted healing, and Pastor David asked us, would we consider having Michael prayed over? So, and I always have mixed feelings on that, because I don't, when you pray over something and ask for prayer, it's like you're saying there's something wrong, when I don't know that it's necessarily wrong. It's not a terrible thing that he has autism, but it's a terrible thing that he has autism. And, but I don't want him to feel any less and to think that we're not okay with who he is. But we decided to go ahead and have him prayed over, not really knowing what would happen. And I was thinking the other day, I thought, man, we had him prayed over, and boy, that went well. He still has autism. He has diabetes now. He's had struggles. Whatever, like, what the heck kind of healing service was that? Because what was healed? But then I started thinking too, we are such a better family for Michael, for having Michael in our lives.
We've had a lot of things thrown at us, and I don't know if we'd be the same people, one, if we didn't have Michael in our lives, but also if we didn't have to deal with all these other things.
So I think that healing, it didn't take the form I think that we thought it might, but it was still there.
Just 2 weeks later, I participated in my first Special Olympics track meet right here at CV High School. I competed in the 50-meter and 100-meter races and the softball throw. I won gold medals in all 3 events. I felt like I could compete with anyone. Autism can't stop me, and diabetes can't stop me from achieving my dreams.
And to be able to have a place where all his needs were met without them even knowing about it, because they didn't really know him, but to be able to see what Special Olympics is, and how it's just the one place where everybody can be themselves and it's okay. And yeah, if they make funny noises, it's okay. If they aren't as fast as somebody else, it's okay. And they're still valued and they're loved and they're celebrated. So that kind of got us hooked.
I'm Patrick McClenahan. I'm president and CEO of Special Olympics World Games, Los Angeles 2015, this past summer. Karen and I have 2 kids. Kelly is 29 and has cerebral palsy. She lives with us. Her brother Eric is 33, and Eric, I think, has grown up with an incredible head on his shoulders because of growing up with his sister. When I produce live sporting events, a 3-hour hotbed of activity in a truck doing a college football game, people would always ask me, how do you stay so calm? And I said, well, it's pretty simple. Every night as we tuck Kelly to bed, I get a perspective on what's important and what's not. But Kelly gives us all that perspective of what's important and what's not. So do our athletes. The World Games was the largest sports humanitarian event in the world this past year. It was the largest event Los Angeles had hosted since the 1984 Olympics. We had 6,500 athletes, 164 countries. Turned out to be the largest gathering of nations for any event of anything for the city of Los Angeles in history.
For us, it's just become a passion, and then we got deeply involved with World Games, and we were granted our own venue, so we got to own the convention center for those 5 days of competition, and had great teams there every day to do the fans in the stands and to be active and involved. So we sort of inherited the whole process, really.
The year before the World Games, we had the Invitational Games, which was kind of our test games. We invited some countries, about 6 countries, to come, Special Olympics Southern California. We took their summer games and we created the Invitational Games at USC. It was 3 days of competition. And we had this photographer that came out who volunteered for the first time ever. Volunteered, he shoots for Justin Timberlake, Paul McCartney. He came out that day and captured these amazing photographs. And the next day, I see Michael's mom, Kathy, and I say, hey, I want to see these pictures, because one of the pictures was of Michael. And so I'm flipping through the pictures, and she's like, wow, that's amazing. Oh, that's terrific. And then I get to Michael, and she goes quiet. She puts her head down, and she gets emotional, and she says, you got him smiling? We don't have any pictures of Michael smiling. Every time there's a camera around, Michael's hiding behind somebody, or his head's down. And here's this picture of Michael holding a baton after the relay race with this big smile on his face. Well, that became known throughout Southern California, at Special Olympics Southern California, and they asked Michael if Michael would be interested in serving as a global messenger.
I remember we were at a softball tournament and they came and said, would Michael be interested in doing that? And I laughed and thought, there's no way he's ever going to get in front of a group. He won't even talk to you when you're just sitting talking to him, especially if he doesn't know you. And he said he would, so okay, sent him and Gabby for the weekend to training, and then it was the week after that, or 2 weeks after his training, he had his first speech.
And the very first time he spoke in front of a group, I had the chance to introduce him. It was here in Glendale at the Alex Theater for the host town ceremony. And I introduced Michael, and he came up, and I stood close to him, because oftentimes when an athlete does his first speech, they might fumble his cards a little bit or might get stuck on a word, so you kind of stand close by so that you can help him through if he stumbles. Well, he did just the opposite.
For Michael, he's got to work at a lot of things. And when they asked us if Michael would want to be a global messenger, these are people that are speaking in front of groups, talking about Special Olympics and what it means to them, and what it can mean to your community. And for Michael to say, yeah, I'll do that. Whoa.
He just belted it out. I mean, it was unbelievable. And to tell you how significant that moment was, is I've been coming to this church for 10 years. I've known the Leones for 10 years. And that was the first time I had ever heard Michael's voice, let alone heard him give a speech. I had never heard Michael speak before.
And so Easter Sunday, we were just a few weeks before Tri-Valley, and we just really wanted him to talk about what Special Olympics had done for him and what it meant. And so therefore, what does it mean to be a volunteer for Special Olympics? And it's one thing to be celebrating Easter and our little microcosm silo lives, and it's another thing to be celebrating Easter and talking about what does that mean, what are the kingdom implications of this, life out of death. And so he fit into that in such a seamless way of, this isn't about absorbing it all for our own interests, it's about sharing that light. And here's an opportunity, and all you have to do is show up and be loving, So that was a great moment.
This is a different kid. This is a young man who is growing more confident, and that confidence wouldn't be there unless he was given the opportunity by Special Olympics to say, hey, here's this thing. And he's done it. He's run with it, and I'm so proud of what he does.
I still train and compete in track and softball. I participated in the summer games at USC and the fall games in Fountain Valley. But now I get to come home where it all started. This summer, 177 countries will be sending over 7,000 athletes to compete in athletic events held throughout Los Angeles for the LA 2015 World Games. Montrose Church will have another chance to show God's love when we cheer for athletes from all around the world as they compete. Even if all you can do is cheer, you will make a difference in someone's life. There's nothing better than to have someone cheering for you whether you're the first or the last to cross the finish line. Reach up, Montrose Church. The world is coming. Thank you for having me here today, and happy Easter.
We don't serve the special needs community, we serve Michael. And so, you know, we don't serve the special needs community, we serve Kelly and Tyler and Tony and, you know, and so as soon as you know an individual, especially a child, but any individual with special needs, and you know their story and you interact with them on a regular basis, it's really hard to know who's giving and who's receiving. I mean, you really don't know, you know, there isn't some sense of we serve the special needs community. That's not really how it feels. How it feels is we get to participate with the special needs community. And so I would say we are far more enriched by our relationship than thinking of it as a ministry. So therefore, all you have to do is expose people. I mean, you don't have to drive them somewhere, you just have to create the rails on which they run. Once those are in place and people experience for the first time, this isn't strange or weird or awkward. In fact, this is probably the most fun I've had in a long time. This person has no filters. This person isn't holding back. They experience joy in its purest form, and courage and determination, and so that's all. I mean, it's one time, and then you are always willing to be in that space.
I will sing to